Cool. Well, I think we can call this meeting to order 10 seconds early. Judy, if you'd be willing to do our roll call.
I would. Hausch.
I'm here.
McQueen.
Here.
Stokes.
Here.
Krieger.
Here.
Sanford.
Here.
Also present is Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swinger and Village Manager Patty Bates.
All right, great. So welcome to the April Fool's Day regular meeting of council. So
Okay, we're done.
nothing that we do today is real. I'm just kidding. It's all real.
I move to adjourn.
So, yeah, you are canceled. So the first thing we...
The Gulch, right?
That's right, the meeting will be at the Gulch. No, we will have the meeting here, and we'll start off with announcements. Does anyone have any announcements?
Yes.
All right, Mary Ann.
There is an announcement about the Shredded event. I think Karen is coming, so I'll wait a minute. So I'll announce the other. So I am making an announcement that next week we have 4 village manager candidates coming to town. They're going to arrive on Tuesday the 9th and do some tours of village government facilities. And then they will be here all day on Wednesday the 10th and Thursday morning. So people should particularly know there are going to be 2 possibilities for people to meet the candidates. One will be Wednesday evening at the Bryan Center. There will be a forum in the gym. Starts at 6:30 p.m. We'll go till 8:30, and then there will be a sort of meet and greet after that. There will also be a forum or a meet and greet sort of thing at the senior center from 8 to 9:45 a.m. There'll be some sort of light refreshments.
On Thursday.
On Thursday, yes. So people, if you can't come to the Wednesday evening, you can come to Thursday morning. If you're not able to come to either and you want to have input, there will be an article in the paper that'll tell you how to do that, and you will be hand-delivered a survey form that will then be picked up for people who are homebound. So that is that announcement.
And I do want to mention on Wednesday, we will have childcare during that 6:30 to 8:30 forum.
For ages 6 and older.
Yes, 6 plus.
Okay, the other announcement is that the chamber in the past annually has had what's called a shredded event where people can bring paper products that they want to have shredded, and they will be shredded. And normally they do that on Earth Day at the Glen Helen parking lot during the same day that the Glen celebrates Earth Day and has the fun Earth Day fun run walk. However, they weren't able to schedule it for that date, so they're doing it Saturday, May 18th. And they've reached out to the village, to Community Solutions, to help, and it's going to be more than just paper. There'll be like batteries and some electronics. There'll be more information about that, but we wanted to make an announcement. It'll be at the Bryan Center.
It'll be here at the Bryan Center in the parking lot. We'll probably loop folks around through the middle of the island out there and let them come up on the other side. So you would come in like you normally do to the right and loop around. And the shredded would be on the other side.
I think 10 to 1, which is the week after the spring, what do we call that, cleanup?
Spring cleanup, yes.
Spring cleanup, so like, if you put a TV out and no one took it, I guess, or something, you could bring it to the shredded event. So there'll be more about that. We still have 2 months to go.
So spring cleanup is?
May
6th through the
May 6th to
10th
10th.
of
Okay.
May.
Yes.
And please put it out on your regular pickup day.
Right. I have a few announcements I want to add. We've got opening day for trails. I mentioned it at our last meeting is April 13th from 11 to 2. It's going to be right in front of the train station. Lots of fun stuff and T-shirts and other giveaways. So that's going to be awesome. I also wanted to mention, because I saw Catherine Hitchcock's notice about the utility roundup. So I think it's good for us to remind folks that that is making a huge impact for people, positive impact. And so I would encourage folks to continue to think about opting in to the Roundup. As Catherine mentioned, you won't even notice, which I know I don't.
Yeah, you don't have to write out those last 69 cents or whatever, or
Yeah.
just 0.
Yep. And then I did want to mention something that was on our table from the Ohio Municipal League, because I think this is a great opportunity to contact your state legislators. That is Representative Rick Corrales and Senator Bob Hackett. This is a really great document about how important increasing the gas tax is to improve our roads and bridges. And, you know, right now, it's kind of a little bit in flux. But the bottom line, and this is another thing that, I mean, you might feel it a little bit more, but, you know, the bottom line is if we don't contribute to improving our roads, they're gonna crumble more and more. It's part of the whole, like, lack of funding for infrastructure. And this is a really great document, and maybe, Judy, if we could even scan this and get it on the website, because it's got some really good details about why this is so important. Right now, our governor, Mike DeWine, has, you know, really put forward a great idea about how we need to increase the gas tax. The House did a pretty good job. The Senate has not been doing such a great job, and I think a little bit of a push would be helpful. So call your representatives, let them know that we need to fix our crumbling infrastructure. Any other announcements from council? All right, I think we have an announcement from Amy and Heather.
Sure.
Yeah, come on up.
Okay.
Let's hear about YS Pride.
So, we're gonna pass out a little bit first so you can get everything.
Oh yeah, and Christine's here as well.
Yeah, Christine's
Oh, my
part of it
goodness.
as well.
Feels like Christmas.
Thank you.
There's a rainbow, right?
Oh, thanks, Christine.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ooh.
Thank you. Okay, great.
So, good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Amy Walmsley, and I'm a member of the YS Pride Planning Committee. As you are aware, Yellow Springs has a long history of being active in the promotion and practice of equality and inclusion of the LGBT community. And as people around the world continue to face violence and inequality, and sometimes even torture and execution because of who they love or how they look and who they are, it is up to all of us in our community to continue to work together towards a world where all people can enjoy their rights fully. In 1969, the Stonewall Uprising was a series of demonstrations by members of the gay community against a police raid that took place on June 28th at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village. This has been seen as the foundation of the Pride movement. This year marks the 50th anniversary of that movement. And so we're coming to you today to ask for support as we continue to plan for events, which will begin on June 27th. The YS Pride event has continued to grow since 2013 here in Yellow Springs. And we know growth is only possible through Yellow Springs support and partnerships. We want to extend the opportunity to the Village of Yellow Springs to help promote this event and support us as we celebrate the diversity of our friends, our neighbors, and ourselves. We included in the packet, you are receiving the folder, a formal request of support outlining many of the opportunities for village government to assist us. We also have a tentative schedule in there and some other information. Part of our requests include a resolution by the Village Council approving support of YS Pride Week, which we are, as of right now, is scheduled for June 27th through June 30th, 2019. We are asking for Bryant Center rental fees to be waived, which would include the front lawn, the gym, conference room A and B, and the dance studio, along with access to water and electricity for our vendors. We're asking for permission to set up the stage area and some porta potties on Friday evening, after business hours, of course, so it doesn't invade anybody. We're also talking about, if possible, to barricade the east side of the parking lot. We know that emergency access to and from the center is very important, and so we wouldn't want to hinder that. But there is a small cutaway there where we, in the past, have parked a couple vendor trucks, so we wanted to try to do that again, and maybe barricade a little bit of the parking for the disabled, and to help some musicians and vendors set up and tear down. Route 68, YS Pride banners. We would actually like to have some this year. We think that would be really awesome. If we could get those up, possibly, for the street fair, that would really advertise, obviously, for YS Pride with all the people that come to our village, if that's possible. Collaboration with the community outreach specialists to show support for the LGBT community and to also share the resources that are available within our community for those. And then support of the HRC and the Arts and Culture Commission. We are asking for some monetary support, one for possibly the banners, which would be a one-time opportunity, but then also guest speakers and porta potties for the disabled, to have those available. We are currently looking at guest speakers to speak on Stonewall Thursday night at the YS Brewery. And then a statement of welcome from all of you at any point in time that works throughout your schedules, particularly on Saturday, June 29th for the kickoff of the YS Pride Festival. But then if any of our other events fit in within your schedule, you're more than welcome to come to those events and speak on behalf of the Village Council. Yeah, so that's a little bit of what we're asking for. Are there any questions?
Can you talk a little bit about Equitas Health and
Absolutely.
that piece?
So we are in the process of talking to Equitas Health on a few levels. One, they're actually helping us find our Stonewall speakers. But also, Equitas Health has reached out and they're interested in doing HIV testing free to the public. And that's why we're asking for conference rooms A and B. As a result of that, we have also reached out to see if they could offer some free community screenings as well. And so that would almost be set up sort of like a clinical area for people to learn more about resources and get any screenings that may be offered.
Cool. And we're talking about potentially doing that in rooms A and B if that space is available.
I mean, I have no idea right now
Right.
if that space is available or when the banners can be hung or anything like
And
that.
that's my reaction. I really appreciate this list and, you know, that it's early enough, but it strikes me as I go through this list, just in terms of like the way we navigate, that there is a couple, I'm sorting this list into a couple of different cues, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, yes.
Like, for example, we have an incentive policy that would address things like the fee waiver, access to water, and, you know, some of these are things that it would be really helpful for our process.
Yes.
To have an incentive application.
We actually have one already on file. We have already reserved the outside lawn already. Typically, when you reserve the outside lawn, they automatically don't have anything in the gym. Sam kind of has already typically sets that up. So we've already actually reserved that. We have already put in for our parade route to start that permit. So we have a little bit of that. We actually have already paid a portion of our fees as well to the village. So we've gotten some of that. So,
And then
well,
some of these things would be to come to the commissions.
okay,
You know,
Absolutely.
I'm Art and Culture Commission liaison.
okay,
But unfortunately, because of the timing of the village manager search, we're not meeting this month.
okay,
We're meeting in May.
okay.
So we maybe need to talk about that, and Kevin is the HRC.
Yeah,
Okay.
And you're meeting this month?
yeah, we'll be meeting this week, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, if you get to us, whatever your request is, this is gonna be in June, so we got both, April and May meetings you can come to.
And then some of these are village manager issues to coordinate with staff,
We do have quite a
like
bit
the
of.
banners and.
Yeah, and I don't know Johnny keeps the schedules for the banners, and it fills up really fast, and I can guarantee you that Karen has street fair banners up until street fair day at least, which is the 8th.
Right.
I don't know who is scheduled to go up after that, and Johnny is on vacation this week. So what I would like to do, if everyone is agreeable, I'd like to take your request and kind of go through it and do a brief for council and get all the information together and then get back with you if that's possible.
That's great.
Yeah.
My email's at the bottom of both letters, actually. So you can reach out to me, and then we can go from there. I know in the past sort of our protocol and how things work, so that's one of the reasons why we've come so early.
Yeah.
To make sure we can get it all ready and organized for the
Well,
benefit of our
and
village.
so related to this, you guys have decided the last Saturday of June will be YS Pride moving forward. And, one of the things I want to remind us of is, we've talked about village signature events, like Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I think that YS Pride is one of those as well. So I think we, need to, think about what we can do, and, this year, we'll see what we can, fill in, and then next year, maybe we can do more. I guess one thing that, we'll need to ask Karen is whether, could on Street Fair Day, YS Pride banners be up as opposed to street fair banners?
I think you need to ask Johnny. I'm
Okay.
not sure exactly how he's gonna do that. given
Yeah.
Right.
all the work he has to do.
Yeah.
I
But,
thought it
mean,
was
but
worth the
there-
ask, I'll be
there-
honest.
There was, there was a thought around just, that would be really cool for people to come into the village and see, YS Pride on that day, so.
I suggest just getting a few pole banners to
Yeah.
complement and have those up for street fair.
Yeah.
We're actually already working with Antioch Midwest, and they came to us to let us know that they're going to look at putting up a banner on Dayton Yellow Springs Road as people enter
Cool.
and exit the village. So we are already looking at that.
Across the road?
No, just in front of their
Oh,
lawn.
okay,
They'd set it up like right there.
okay.
So, so I just want to say, I really appreciate you guys coming, and, I mean, to me, this is kind of like, setting the stage for moving forward with formalizing this event, We missed the boat last year, and it wasn't on, the, Bryan lawn, John Bryan Center lawn. And we want to make sure that happens moving forward. And then, I want to make sure that, we think as a village about how we can support this kind of event, which is right at the heart of our village values in whatever way we can. So thanks for outlining this. It's I'm really excited.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me today. Thanks for your
Thank you
support.
for the gift.
Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Any other announcements? Okay. Yes. All right, so next is the consent agenda, and so we've got the minutes from March 15th and March 22nd, as well as, Judy, do you want to read all the ordinances that are listed there, or?
Well, because they're on the consent agenda, you don't have to read them individually. What I will say about them is that they all pertain to one aspect of the zoning code, which is that it does not include the electric utility, which we have. Planning code, I'm sorry. Planning code, so this puts the electric utility into all of the sections of the planning code. Denise can speak to it further, and she's included information as well, but it looks like a lot of different ordinances. There's actually one thing that changes all aspects, enters it into all aspects of the planning code.
Okay.
And with respect to voting for the consent agenda, since I was not here for the March 22nd meeting, can I just still just vote in general? Does it matter?
You are still allowed to vote,
Okay.
is what,
It's, adopt, he votes to adopt it.
yes, yes.
So when I vote, it will be.
Okay,
Well,
so,
someone has to move to adopt rather than
Yeah.
approve.
so I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Okay, I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
And I second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next is a review of the agenda. Anything we need to change, add, et cetera. I will say one thing I want to add, since Marianne put something in the packet about it, is the, I guess, the process, sort of procedures for council.
Yes, that's what I wanted to add.
Yes, I'd like to add that as well.
Okay, we can both
All right, good.
co-sponsor the addition.
Yes, and I want to
Under
put that,
old business,
yes,
I
and I want to
guess.
put that at the top of old business as well. Anything else?
I'd like to add an update about the Yellow Springs Community Development Corporation.
Great. Anything else?
yeah.
Okay. So let's look at legislation, and first up for, I'm sorry.
petitions and
Petitions and
communications.
communications.
Yeah.
Would hate to miss that,
Yeah,
yes.
so there were two letters, one from Carlos Landaburo and one from Judith Hempfling, both opposing the change that council did last meeting of saying that there would be no clapping or such things in council meetings.
Okay. All right, so, first piece of legislation is ordinance 2019-06. And Judy, you can read that in by title only.
All right, this is amending the official zoning map of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, for the property known as Millworks, identified by the following Greene County parcel ID numbers. Read those at your leisure, from I-1 mixed use, industrial, to PUD planned unit development.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right, Denise.
So this is the second reading, this and public hearing on the rezoning to PUD. At the discussion on March 4th at the council meeting, we reviewed the conditions that Planning Commission had asked to be considered if you move forward with it. There was an additional one added about general retail, and that's about it. We're just ready to move forward. Staff is supportive of this rezoning.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just highlight, you know, I saw in the paper that it mentioned that we didn't discuss this during the first reading, partly because we had a very lengthy discussion at the prior meeting about it, and I think we went very in-depth about the different issues and accepted all the recommendations from Planning Commission, except the one which we, you know, ultimately ended up agreeing it was fine in terms of health and welfare and that sort of thing. So I guess first of all, I'll open it up to council. Any questions or comments? Okay, questions or comments from citizens? All right.
And you do want to open the public hearing on that?
And yes, and so, and those questions or comments from citizens are part of opening the public hearing officially. So, if there are no comments, Judy, let's do the roll call.
All right, McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Sanford,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes. Okay. Next up is Resolution 2019-13, and I think we can also, yeah, let's read this in full.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to enter into a contract with Hilliard Heinz to conduct an assessment of village policing. Whereas council for the Village of Yellow Springs has determined that the need exists for an assessment of village policing, and whereas council has further determined that the assessment is best performed by an outside agency well-versed in current best practices for local policing and experienced in performing such assessments, and whereas Hilliard Heinz has demonstrated not only such knowledge and experience, but also a knowledge of Yellow Springs and the various views of its citizens regarding local policing. Now therefore, council for the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio does hereby resolve that, Section 1, the Village of Yellow Springs wishes to contract with Hilliard Heinz to perform the scope of work in a manner substantially indicated in Exhibit A. Section 2, the amount of the contract shall be $30,000 plus expenses, said expenses not to exceed $6,000. Section 3, the village manager is hereby authorized and directed to enter into a contract with Hilliard Heinz.
I do have one correction to this, where it says expenses not to exceed $6,000. It should say expenses estimated to be, because it is not a not to exceed amount. It is an estimated to be amount.
Okay.
All right, Lisa, Mary Ann, do you want to talk about this?
Well, we've talked about this before, that Bob Wasserman, who went to Antioch and then has become an internationally recognized consultant for police reform, community policing, has offered to come here at what we are sure is a very reduced price from his firm of $30,000. And to get this completed in 10 weeks, 3 phases, which presumably will start sometime in April, probably. So if not done by well, let's see, 10 weeks, that's like 2.5 months. So it'll probably take through June, through the end of June, probably. And it will involve at least one community forum in the middle of this process for community members to have input. And I've met with the Village Mediation Program. They're on board to help with this and to help in the design of it. We've started talking about how that might be designed. Of course, we'll talk with Bob and his colleagues about that.
Lisa, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add would be to underscore that I think something that's really special about the approach that this team has brought forward is how collaborative it is, both with the village employees, with the members of the police department and the chief, as well as a real intense listening to the community. So there's nothing about this, I think, that should be construed as anything other than trying to do all that we can as a community and as a police department and as a council to continue to improve police and community relationships. It's not about like going out and trying to find something that's bad. It's about trying to improve and to better even embody our village guidelines for policing. So I think it's really a positive thing, and I feel very fortunate that we were able to find a consulting team that has such a close, relationship and really understands Yellow Springs, because that could be a real challenge if we just hired some firm, from Columbus or something that just, did these standard assessments and didn't really understand our community.
And I think
this is a tactical thing. I wonder if that estimated expenses line should go in Article 3 of the contract as well.
We can put it in there. It came in a separate email, so it's in writing. It's just not in the contract.
Okay, that's all I had. Sorry, Brian.
Well, no, that's okay. I mean, I just wanted to kind of riff off of what you were saying in terms of, this was something that we planned last year because we realized, and we budgeted for the idea that we wanted to make sure that we had a mechanism to think about how we evaluate, in particular, implementing our village guidelines for policing. The other thing I did want us to add is something around communications. I did not see that listed, but I know that Bob talked about that. So in terms of the items that I want to make sure that are part of the recommendations, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anything related to improving our communications.
Communications between whom and whom?
Outward facing, so communications about what our police department does, so that we are better interfacing with the community. And I know that was, at
Yes,
least in my discussion, a big part of what Bob was bringing to the table in terms of thinking about social media, et cetera. I did not see that mentioned anywhere.
It is not specifically, you're correct.
Yes. So
I just
want-
went back to the original,
yes.
his proposal too.
So I want that to be added. So, any other,
There are
Yeah.
two just changes on page 2 and page 3, right about in the middle. It says community mediation, and it should say village mediation.
I think that, that piece about the communication could go on the, under that, the bullet, based on the work above, develop a set of recommendations, that it could just be added probably there.
yeah. I mean, I think they're already contemplating that. I
Yeah.
just didn't, I just
Make it
want to make sure,
explicit.
yes, exactly. Okay.
Mary Ann, did you have another one?
Oh,
You
it's
said two.
page 2 and page 3, just the same
Okay.
word.
Okay. Any questions or comments from citizens? All right,
And we do need a motion.
yes. So, can I get a motion to approve this resolution?
I move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. All right, and our last piece of legislation is Resolution 2019-14. Let's also read that in full, Judy.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to submit an application to the Yellow Springs Community Foundation to help defray the expenses of the consultant performing the police assessment. Whereas the Yellow Springs Community Foundation regularly accepts applications for grants to projects that benefit others, and whereas the Village of Yellow Springs is contracted with a consultant to perform a policing assessment for the village, and whereas the village expects the expenses of the consultant over and above the contract cost to be approximately $6,000, now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, that, Section 1, the village manager is authorized to submit an application to the Yellow Springs Community Foundation for a grant to help defray the expenses of the consultant performing the policing assessment. Section 2, this resolution shall go into effect at the earliest period allowed by law.
All right, can I get a motion, please?
I move. Second.
All right. So I think this is pretty straightforward. We're hoping to defray the costs in terms of the expenses because we budgeted $30,000 for the assessment.
I will say
Yes.
that the deadline was yesterday, so I went ahead and applied for this. So if you decide not to do it, we'll have to pull the grant, but the grant is
Go
in.
Patty.
Wow, all right. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Any questions or comments? All right. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. No special reports. Do we have any citizen concerns? Okay. All right, if not, we are moving into old business. And as mentioned, the first thing that we're adding is a discussion about the change in council procedures related to no clapping, snapping, sign waving. Mary Ann?
Yeah. So after we made that decision at the last council meeting, someone, I forget whom, sent an article that I think came from Charlottesville,
That was me.
Lisa did, about this issue. And I think I would phrase the importance of maybe marginalized groups, but maybe activist groups anyway, feeling like sometimes they just need to be heard. And then I had a little bit of correspondence with Carlos Landaburo, and started thinking about it and realized sometimes we want to clap. I mean, you know, like someone does some good thing, we want to clap. We don't necessarily want to have a rule that says there is no clapping in this room. And so as I continued to think about it, I think it's not about clapping or not. It's about trust, I think, safety, a sense of people feeling like they're being listened to, that everyone's being listened to, that all viewpoints are being weighed. And so my thought was to, well, and actually then it was Al Denman's memorial service where someone got up and said that he had wanted to invite the Ku Klux Klan to Antioch, and the whole college said, no, we don't want the Ku Klux Klan. So then he had a forum on talking about why they should or shouldn't invite the Ku Klux Klan. And it started getting me thinking that I really thought it would make sense to have a discussion, maybe at a regular council meeting, maybe not, I'm not sure, with people who have this concern that they think we're taking away their rights to free speech, which I don't really agree with, but I know that there are people that feel that way strongly, then that we frame some kind of discussion process so that we can talk about how can we do this so that people have a sense that there's trust in the room, that people feel all voices can be heard, and that people are listening, especially that council is listening. So I had asked Lisa if she would be interested in thinking about how we might plan this and then come back with a proposal. That was what I was thinking.
Okay, Lisa, do you want to
Yeah,
add anything?
I'm interested in doing that, and also along with Marianne, attended a mediation meeting where we heard and, you know, some input on that. You know, from my perspective, I didn't anticipate the reaction at all, so that just demonstrates that I had some implicit bias against that, because for me it had nothing to do with silencing people. For me it had to do with allowing more time to hear people speak. But I had underestimated that clapping was such an important expression, at least for some people. So, you know, I think it's important to think about what's underneath that. I mean, because the other aspect of it is, you know, these meetings do last until 10:30, 10:45 at night. And so we do have to have some efficiencies. That's not the most important thing. And the most important thing is that we have citizen input. There's a lot of ways we have that. And we hear citizen input outside of this meeting, too. And I hope that people know that. So I'm glad to work on it with you, Marianne.
Okay.
Could I just?
Yes, Patty.
I think that in the discussion that we will have in the future, I think one thing that we have to be really careful to address is that a lot of people don't come to the meetings and don't speak out because they feel intimidated in this room if it's crowded with a bunch of other people, and the opinion that they want to express is maybe not the opinion of the majority of the people in the room. And I think that maybe it's not necessarily that you ban the clapping or the finger snapping or the signs, but find a way to address making them more comfortable in speaking out in an opposing view, because that's the part that I hear, is that there are people who do come to the meetings but end up not standing at the microphone because the majority of the people in the room have expressed an opinion different from theirs in such strong ways that they're not comfortable doing that.
Kaneda, Kevin, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was thinking pretty much what Patty said, and I don't necessarily see this as limiting someone's speech as much as it is allowing those people who feel uncomfortable at the time to be able to express themselves without the repercussion of having everyone else kind of, not that everyone was booing, but even thinking about the silence that
Well,
can really,
frowny face signs.
yeah,
Yes.
that those types of things can really hinder free speech for opposing viewpoints. And so I do think that we should be moving towards something that allows all voices to be heard.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, I think about British Parliament, and that it's sort of commonplace to be rowdy, and that's how you sometimes get your point across. But I think in concert with most of what everyone else is saying, we are not trying to shut people down. We want to give folks the opportunity, even if they do have an opposing view. But I think all of us need to be involved with governing ourselves. Seems like such a long time ago since I've been here. I missed one meeting. But, at a particular meeting, Brian, you expressly asked folks not to clap at a particular point, and there were folks that intentionally clapped after that. So this is not a party as much fun as we seem to be having. There are certain rules that we tend to follow, and we ask everyone that comes in here to abide by most, if not all, of those rules. So there's some of that that's our baseline. That we're here to conduct your business, and we want to be allowed the time to do that. We want to hear from you. We want to share whatever we have to, but there's rules that have been established for years that allow for that to happen in a safe and orderly fashion, and so we need to abide by those at the start.
Right. Thanks, Kevin. And, I agree, just to kind of extend that, part of this is we have to get things done. This is our opportunity to do that. Just a second. But I do want to make a couple comments because I've been thinking a lot about this. And, first of all, I'm open to qualifying, when we clap. Certainly when we, recognize someone's service, we want to clap. I will say honestly, I think from what I saw on social media and the letters to the paper, this really emphasizes the disinformation piece that we talk a lot about at council, and it's really disappointing. But beyond that, I think it's important for us to remember, and Carlos had some precedents which don't apply to anything that we've done. We're not shutting down any community interactions or communications, quite the opposite. We spend a lot of time there. And I know I often get criticized for giving too much time to people to speak, but I think that's important. That's not going to change. But yeah, I'm a little bit frustrated about the way some people have messaged what we put out there. And I will say we began this because people that listen on TV, when people are clapping, they cannot hear what's going on. I know that there were other concerns about a safe place, which I also appreciate, but that was where this began, was the fact that people can't even listen to meetings because of that clapping, which doesn't happen that often. I agree, all right? But this is not reactionary. I think it's practical. So with that, Karen, did you want to say something?
Just
Yes,
say one
please.
thing. I wanted to thank Judy for including the article from the Institute for Local Government. And I went on their website, and they have more information about that. So I think that would be a good resource.
Yeah, I thought that was really a great resource. Thank you, Judy. Karen?
Karen Wintrow. I would encourage council to maintain this rule and see how it works. I wanted this rule enacted for the 12 years I was on council, so I was very happy when you all passed it for all of the reasons that you said. And I just would encourage, if you want to have conversation about ways for people to be heard and participate in council, I would agree that that's a good conversation to have, but I don't think you need to change the rule at this point for that to happen. And Brian is right, the misinformation has been rife it's been that they're trying to shut down, that council is trying to shut down voices, and that's not true at all. So, and I've also noticed that a number of people have jumped onto Facebook to say, that's true in almost every community, that you're not allowed to clap. And in Parliament, they're fighting each other. They're not it's not citizens fighting. It's those people. You guys could be doing that, I guess, if you wanted.
Well, maybe we'll try that.
Thanks. And I appreciate that silent clap, too. Any other questions, comments? All right, thanks, Karen. Yes, Megan.
So I'm speaking as a citizen, and I wanted to come up and say something about it a couple weeks ago when you talked about it, but there is something about that. I know you're saying it's not reactionary and it's disinformation to say it's reactionary, but you have to kind of see that it's, you know, look at today. This is kind of more common, right? I mean, it's these really rare occasions when things are really emotional and council chambers fill up and people want to express what's happening because they're frustrated. I know it's hard to hear that from where you're sitting, and people are coming out with you with, you know, sometimes really inappropriate. I mean, I think civil discourse in this country has gone downhill. It's another thing, but it does seem reactionary, and it does seem to what happened to the most recent incident because of the timing of it. And so I would just encourage you to. I mean, I take criticism too. And I know that it's really hard to take criticism, but this back and forth is democracy, and we have to know that, you know, if nobody spoke to anything, then you'd be able to get a lot more done. You'd be super efficient, but we have to think that you as our representatives are going to be improved by what we have to say, and it's not always delivered perfectly, and some people don't want to speak. They want to get to you privately. Other people want to not speak but amplify what somebody else says by clapping or snapping or making some expression like that. So I just encourage you to kind of think about from their perspective how it does appear, even though I know that you also have been thinking about it maybe for a longer time.
Thanks, Megan. Any other comments? Okay. Oh, yes, Sam.
Sam Ekin Road. I've been thinking about this a lot too, and I've been thinking about institutional memory and how important it is, and how sometimes the information falls through the cracks. People don't always go to the right website or read the right thing in the paper. And I wondered if maybe in your consideration you might think about just a little tiny pamphlet that says, "Welcome to Village Council. We're glad you're here. It's an important part of our democratic process that you be here and that you be allowed to voice your opinions. And these are a few bullet points that we'd like to make sure that everybody knows." And then it could just be out there on the table. If somebody's acting up, somebody else can hand them one. I think I could have used something like that about 20 years ago when I showed up late to a village council meeting and clapped at something somebody said and then went, uh-oh, I don't think I was supposed to do that. So anyway, just a thought.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Great idea. All right, any other comments? Yes.
Brendan Egan. I think the silent clap works. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, all three, everybody.
All right, yeah, thank you. I appreciate Marianne and Lisa bringing this issue and the comments that are made. And again, I just want to emphasize, as long as I have this gavel, which I'm never going to use, we want to hear citizens' comments. So it's all for show. All right, so let's.
I want to use it all.
Yeah, really, I'm going to grab a copy.
Yeah, I know, you guys, yeah, you guys can use it. Lisa, were you? No, okay. All right, so we're gonna next talk about the comp land use plan. Denise, is that you? All right.
At the last Planning Commission meeting, they hammered out the elements that they wanted to see in the comp plan update. The comp plan was last updated in 2010 and is supposed to be updated every 5 years, and so I was getting a little bit nervous about it, although when I went to Planning and Zoning quarterly meeting, I found out that some very big cities around the area have been remiss by 20 and 30 years, so we're doing pretty good, yes.
That's late.
Yes. So they specifically wanted to have an electronic format this time, something that's a living document, and a lot more visuals within it, and have links that are embedded within the document that you can go to for more information if you're so inclined to want to have all that information. There's, you know, in the 2010, it has population projections that were from the 2000 census. They're not from the 2010. So the nice thing about the electronic format will be that, you know, once the 2020 is done, we'll be able to update, we'll be able to continually make this a relevant document. The woman, Kelly Wright from LJB, had told Johnny that lots of times once you do a study or a report is done, it's pretty much outdated right after you finished it, because things change. And so that's what we're hoping to get out of this. I talked with Johnny about, he's in the midst of working with LJB on a lot of interactive maps, and he showed me what they've done so far, which is really awesome, and the different types of utilities. And he said that one way, you know, because we have a $30,000 budget, that we can make this more palatable is to use LJB to do the interactive mapping for whatever the consultant decides they want to update.
So that was one of the things I wanted to comment on is, it talks about it being available on the website, but I didn't read it being interactive. So maybe I'm missing something, but I guess I want to make sure that, you know, we're actually talking about links in the RFP that we're putting out there.
Yeah, we have, our maps are interactive. But we're at a staff level discussing whether or not we're going to let those be interactive, just out there.
Publicly interactive. Publicly interactive.
Publicly interactive. So,
Okay.
just because, for a couple of reasons that Johnny and I have been talking about, you may or may not want to have everybody be able to see your infrastructure for water and electric and that kind of thing.
Right.
So, I mean, at some level, the maps would be interactive, but it would be more at a staff level where you'd have to have some permission to get into it, to do something with it.
Okay.
But the rest would just be, it would be available, you could find it electronically, and then you would have the links to go for the extra information that you want. Like the housing needs assessment, you could get the 400-page document if you wanted to.
Okay, good. Have we talked to Greene County Regional Planning?
As far as one of the possibilities for,
Well, I want to, and this was one of the things I mentioned at the prior meeting, is I want to make sure we align our efforts because they're updating the county-wide comp plan.
right.
So I want to make sure that we feed into that the way I think Bellbrook is doing. So I want to make sure that's a part of this.
Greene County Regional Planning actually did Bellbrooks.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that we're like, you know, that's kind of the, you know, being on the board, that's one of the things we've talked about is getting all the municipalities to, you know, kind of tie into what they're doing.
Well, they're in the midst of doing their
Subdivision regulation.
well, there's subdivision regulations, but they're doing their vision. They did their 2020, now they're doing their next, they're gearing up for that, I believe.
Yeah.
For their
Yeah,
own
I
comp
mean,
plan.
we just
so-
talked about that last week, so I want to make
Yeah.
sure that that's a part of
So
this.
should that be mentioned in the request for proposal? The line, or I don't know what.
Well, I don't know, I mean, because they could end up actually being one of the applicants. I mean, we will definitely send that to them as give them an opportunity to
Well, let's just
put
make
out a
sure that we're
proposal.
communicating with them and, making sure that these, like, complement each other or whatever.
Maybe tomorrow the three of us can get together, because I have an idea about that. But
Okay.
one thing on the deliverables, you don't have, it looks like you're asking for just one copy, one text copy, one flash drive. Do you want to ask for additional print copies? I mean, it's just a thought.
Yeah, I
because-
could maybe do, yeah, we were kind of thinking, well, if we need more, we'll, because we have our plotter and we could do our own updating, we would do that, but, yeah, I can definitely change that. And I didn't put in any timeline yet for them getting back, it's just dependent on where we go with this.
So a couple other comments. I appreciate that the active transportation plan is highlighted. That's great. I guess I wondered, in terms of economic development and the focus on the vision, how relevant that is. And I'm not saying, I mean, 9 years ago, I mean, I know it was done in 2010, but it seemed very focused on that in particular. And so that, I don't know, raised a red flag. Lisa, were you gonna?
Well, I was also going to comment on the economic development aspect.
Okay.
I acknowledge that economic impacts are mentioned. There's a couple of lines. I think that's what Brian's referring to about the economic development. There's just a sentence. But when I look at the overview document, I appreciate that it acknowledges the loss of racial diversity and young families with children in the village. But then it goes on to focus on smart growth, sustainability, housing incentives, new urban design, and multi-generational housing developments that I think is important, but I think it shorts the other aspect of creating a more thriving business environment and economic development in the village. Because some of the same issues that we have with housing development, we have with business development because of space constraints.
And we can add some more on that.
And then when you layer on top of it, some of that may not be within scope of this project, but some of the other challenges of doing business in Yellow Springs. I mean, hopefully we'll fill up the CBE within the next, year, maybe. But then what, So for me, and speaking both as a council person and also as the liaison for the Economic Sustainability Commission, we want to run really close in tandem with you on this and keep shining a light on not only housing, but also the climate of doing business in Yellow Springs.
Okay, well, we can definitely embellish that. I think it's important though to note that this isn't a visioning process in and of itself. I mean, this is about taking existing data that's out there, incorporating those elements of the vision plan from 2010 that are still relevant, and then along with council goals, trying to just, and then once you do another visioning, we would incorporate that into the plan because it will be a living document.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I realize I will share at the last Greene County Regional Planning meeting, NVRPC has provided a proposal of how the county might do this, and they've come up with 10 areas. So one is an active transportation plan, which we already have, and one is, the land use piece and whatever. And so, I guess my thought is, just maybe looking a little bit more at that. And again, talking to Devin Shoemaker, just so
There's
we
a
are.
lot of elements in the comp plan that aren't specifically mentioned in here, because this is just kind of like a broad general overview, but, I mean, we're gonna, in the comp plan itself, it digs down a lot deeper. I mean, it's like, talks about wellhead protection and a lot of other things like that.
Okay.
But definitely, and you're suggesting I talk to who at MVRPC?
Green County, so this is Devin.
Devin, oh, yeah.
But they are working with MVRPC to do theirs. So, I guess my main thought is just, if we can align what we're doing, because that's what we've been talking about at regional planning, is the municipalities, like, tying into the county plan.
Yeah.
So.
And I acknowledge it's not visioning, but when I read things like that there's a future land use, include a proposed land use map, I just really think we should signal that we're not just talking residential.
Well, and, right, I mean, we have our urban service boundary map. It just, things just need to be updated. And there's that broader discussion at some point, but that's not to go into the comp plan right now, maybe more in the visioning, and then because your urban service boundary does maybe extend outside of the current borders, maybe there is a possibility for some future growth in certain areas of the community, but that's more in the visioning. And I think where we want to get to a point where we do the visioning first and then update the comp plan.
Well, and let me frame it this way. I mean, I think we're leading in the county in a lot of ways, with what we're doing with GIS. I mean, the LJB thing, was, something that, I'm glad that we got, involved in that GIS. And, they are seeing things like our complete streets policy and that we have an active transportation plan. So I think this is an opportunity to, again, make sure we're aligned with the county, but also, I think we're doing a good job. So I don't want to, suggest that I don't, think this is a good plan, but just that we're aligned with that.
Yep. We're definitely ahead of the game on a lot of fronts.
Yes.
And it was interesting with LJB, just taking things that we found in boxes on shelves from studies and plans that you were able to take and then electronically incorporate them. And these maps that they've created that Johnny's worked so hard on them are really something. And it's something we'll always have now. He can tell you where the manholes are, where the catch basins are, where the electric poles are, where the hydrants are. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We will meet and
I think
hammer this out a little bit more.
the upshot with this is, I guess I'd like to revisit this before we put out the RFP.
Okay.
I think there are a few tweaks, and then I want to make sure that we talk to Devin.
That sounds great. And Lisa, if you just want to send me if you have any
I'll
thoughts
make
on
some
that.
notes. Thank you.
Yeah, just send that to me.
And-
Thank you.
And I have some, mostly wording things.
All right, thanks, Denise.
Could I make a recommendation that we move transient guest lodging next? Because I think that's the last thing Denise has to stay for.
Sure.
And I'm sure she'd like to head home.
Yeah, I'm not actually leading that. I just was asked to prepare a report, so.
Okay, yeah, let's do transient guest lodging next. So, Mary Ann, are you going to start that?
Well, I'll start it. The more I started thinking about this, though, I realized I do have a conflict of interest since I have a transient guest lodging establishment. So what I did is just tried to make sure that everything that we might want, that council might want in order to consider this, was in the packet. So I included a one-page overview of sort of looking at this phenomena, in particular Airbnb worldwide, and my recommendation basically that council direct planning commission to come up with something that's simple and timely. And then Denise provided an overview of the number of lodgings that we have and the types that they are, whether they're in a home or whether they're a separate structure, non-residential. And then, and Denise also included some of the legislation about transient guest lodging, as well as some possible recommendations of what Planning Commission could do in terms of limiting it as a conditional use. Patty did the same thing on her page with some bulleted points of the kind of things that other communities may have done to limit it. And then there's the report from the meeting that Kaneda and A.J. Williams hosted, which was attended by, I guess, 15 people maybe, with some of those comments. And then I guess Judy or Denise included the legislation that would make it be a conditional use. And I would just say that I don't think that right now we have a problem, but I know that there are communities that have definitely experienced problems with this. I mean, for example, I just had friends that came back from Crystal River, Florida, where the manatees are, and they said that last time they went there, there was like one Airbnb, and now the whole river is lined with them. So it can take off, and it can really change the nature of a community, especially a tourist community. So I'm going to pull back, and that's it, what I have to say.
Well, I'm glad we've got the discussion started, and appreciate everyone who was at the forum and all the comments that came out. I think one thing I left with is the folks who are involved with transient guest lodging want us to bring more data besides just anecdotal data. More information about communities that are our size or close to our size. And again, I think what's really important is that we begin the discussion and start thinking about it, because it was very telling to me that across the board, everyone said, "Oh, not a problem. There's not a problem with these." And then a couple of folks stopped and thought and said, "Well, there's like 4 of them, within a half a block of my place. And oh, there's about 6 of them within, a spitting distance of where I live." And they said, "Well, gosh, I wouldn't want the whole block, to turn into transient guest lodging." So, I mean, I think it started to sink in the possibilities. I mean, call it worst case or not. But again, just for us to go into this with our heads up, making informed decisions, I don't think we're at a place where we need to do anything necessarily right now. Maybe going from, permitted to conditional use, that's certainly something we can consider. And then there was discussions about treating businesses or locations downtown differently than out in the town and whatnot. So I think the most important thing that we've done is to begin the discussion. I think we just, again, keep applying some intelligence to the direction that we're going, and we'll come up with something that makes sense and makes the right number of people upset. Because we'll compromise, and then nobody will be happy, but we'll be in a good place.
Lisa, did you want to?
Well, I really like the idea that the planning commission would consider it. I mean, I think that we have a really strong planning commission. I think it's within scope for that commission, and I think that's a good way to move. So I support that.
So 2 things that I noted. One is whether we need to be clear about the lodging tax related to transient guest lodging. I mean, I don't know where that shows up or whatever, but that was just a thought that occurred to me, that this is an aspect of what we do now, and so I don't know where that fits or whatever, but that was one thing I wrote down.
What do you mean, be clear about it?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just not referenced anywhere. I mean, I know this isn't, a complete document, but,
Oh, so you say in the legislation, you think that it would be mentioned?
I don't know.
because
I
it's
mean,
a separate piece of legislation.
Okay,
It'll be referenced in the conditional use.
okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so, I mean, so that's just one thing, I don't want that to be forgotten. And then, I guess the other thing that, I was thinking about is, so if it's not owner occupied and, what was the other thing I wrote here? I guess, maybe Ted, if you don't mind, like, kind of speaking to just how you imagine this conditional use piece, like, working?
Well, Planning Commission had already, Ted Donnell, Planning Commission had already discussed this portion of it, and the conditional use simply means that anybody who was wanting to change to a transient lodging establishment have to go before Planning Commission for the conditional use. And so then it gets vetted publicly, neighbors are informed that there is in fact an application before Planning Commission so that they can come down and be aware of what situation it is, give Planning Commission an opportunity to put conditions on that conditional use relative to what neighbors say and everybody else. And going back to your thing about lodging tax, that would just simply be one of the standard conditions for the conditional use approval.
Okay,
So,
cool.
that helps.
All right, thank you.
Well, one other thing that came up, sort of at the end of the public meeting, I guess I was surprised that everybody said they used Airbnb as opposed to any of the other platforms. But I don't know where we stood or if folks agreed it's better to allow Airbnb to do the whole thing. I know that's starting to be a controversial thing now because Airbnb is getting jacked up.
Did you see the article that Judy sent?
Yeah. So, yeah. So if everybody's happy, we can leave that as is. Okay.
Okay.
All right, enough of me.
All right, so I guess where we're at is, we're gonna have Planning Commission look at this. We already talked about that. Are we wanting to move forward with the conditional use tonight or soon? Or what's the feeling there? I mean, I think Lisa, you had mentioned that at the last meeting that maybe we should do this sooner rather than later.
What would be the, turnaround time for Planning Commission, given the other things that Planning Commission has to deal with?
We can talk about it at our meeting next Monday. We can put it on there, and if we come to some resolution at that meeting, then we have to put it out as a public hearing, so I'd have to put it in the paper at the next meeting, and then from that point, it goes on to council for your 2 readings.
But that's only if you come to a consensus at the next meeting.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I mean, if Planning Commission agrees to hear it publicly, then a consensus would need to be achieved at the May meeting. But
Yeah.
to have it discussed.
Yeah, we'll
yeah.
discuss it. I mean, I can share with them. It used to be a conditional use, and then it was made a permitted use. So, I mean, I can just go over the history of that. This is what Planning Commission had thought to add as conditions the last time, and then if they're amenable, we'll just have a discussion, because I have to come back and put things into a, I have to publicly notice it as a change to the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And
All
they'll
right.
have these documents that are in this packet as information.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I can put that in there.
All right,
Okay.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, the SBA cell tower buyout. Patty, you're gonna start that?
Sure. As council's well aware, SBA made an offer to us to purchase our cell tower lease, well, their lease, with a one-time lump sum payment as opposed to a monthly payment that they currently make to us. Normally, this is not something that staff would recommend we do. I mean, we've turned SBA themselves down several times since I've been here, but given the number of infrastructure projects which are now on our plate, staff sat down and talked about it and decided that we would recommend to council that we would allow them to buy this lease out for a one-time lump sum payment. They did, when I went back to them at council's request, they did come up to $305,000. They said this is their absolute highest. If we choose not to accept this, then the lease will just continue on as it is. And they'll probably come back in another couple years and ask you to do it again. Since this has been under discussion at council, I have been just besieged, and I do not use that word lightly, besieged by consultants and auctioneers and everybody else who wants to help us negotiate a better price. I do not feel like that is the right thing to do. I think that engaging a consultant at this time, after we've already been in conversation with SBA, is in bad faith. But if that's what council wants me to do and that's your decision, then I will do it. But I am asking council to make a decision one way or the other about this lease, because it's been hanging on here for, 8, 10 weeks now, something like that.
Okay. Kevin?
Well, if SBA is willing to just remain in the lease as is, I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion. I move that we direct the village manager to sell the lease for the tower at the, what is it, $305,000.
All right, I'll second. Okay, any discussion?
I think a lot of the discussion has centered around the potential future value being greater than what they're offering. So that's why I would not be in favor of selling.
Okay, Lisa?
That's been my, a point as well. And I really am sensitive to having respect for the recommendation of staff. I want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know that there's this feeling of, there are a lot of infrastructure projects, and it feels like, a bird in the hand, it's cash. But I also feel a sense of financial uncertainty about the long-term future value.
And I will tell you, it's a crapshoot either way. Mm-hmm. And staff has been very upfront about that. We don't know what their plans hold for the future. They could pull everything off that tower. There aren't going to be any users on it here in about a month. It will only be sitting there with the basic monthly lease, and there won't be any other subscribers on it. It could turn around 3 months from now and have a bunch of subscribers. They could use it for 5G. They could dismantle it after 5G. It is a crapshoot. So,
I mean, I'll just say the reason why, I brought the future value piece in is because, 305,000 today is a couple million, in 50 years or whatever, but that also assumes that we would invest that money as opposed to spending that money. So I don't think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about spending that money now.
right.
Any other comments, questions? Anything from citizens? Yeah, Megan?
I was going to ask about the future value, so I'm glad that you brought that up, because
Yep.
that's something I thought that there was going to be an analysis of what this money means.
So,
for
yeah,
this.
so, I just plugged it in online, and, if we invested, one proposal out there is that we spend 140 to clean up, what's it called?
Sutton Farm.
Yeah, but what's
The debris pile.
Yeah. And, you know, so let's say we invested the other 165,000. In the future value of that is 1.5 million in 50 years. So, I mean, so if we actually banked that money as opposed to spending it, then I think there's a good argument for, you know, it's almost the same in my mind, you know, whether we like sell it and invest it. But if we're talking about spending that money now, I'm not sure that that analysis matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And based on the work that, well, that Scott Fife's, just amortization table, if you will, for lack of a better term, you know, we would, in less than 50 years, if we just banked the lease payments, we would get to over $1 million in a very short period of time. Because that's, you got the monthly coming in, and then every 5 years it jumps up 15%.
Not 15%. I don't believe it's 15%. But
I thought it was 15%. Like it averaged about 2.5%.
It's every 15 years it
Every-
changes, I think, a certain amount. I think that's the 15, not 15%.
Well, I think the numbers were right. If we all looked at the information that was provided, it seemed to be right. And we got to that dollar figure much sooner than 50 years.
Right. So I guess, you know, so I guess what I'm pointing out is if we were investing this money, then I'd probably, you know, I could go either way. But I feel a little bit differently if we're just spending it now, so.
But this vote is not about how we spend the money. The vote is just which way we go.
Well, it's kind of about that because.
My motion was not about how we spend the money. The motion I was making was we sell it now, or we just revert to the process that we're doing. That was what I was doing, not how it gets spent.
But that being said, I mean, the reason we're discussing this is about, you know, whether we're gonna spend this, you know, use this money or not.
Well, to
So,
me,
I
that's a
mean,
separate discussion.
Okay.
Well, I think it's part of the discussion. It's certainly, I'm in favor of not selling the lease because it's easier to do nothing, first of all. And secondly, if we're going to talk about future money, I think it's worth more to keep the lease. And I just don't believe that a company would say, we'll give you $305,000 and then tear this thing down because it's going to be worth nothing in a matter of months.
Well, I think that this has been talked through at, I don't know, a number of meetings. I don't imagine that there's anything new on the table, and I would just like this to be voted up or down and be done with it. That's what I want.
Well, I mean, fair enough.
Can I
but
call the vote?
Well,
Am I able to do that?
I think we have to allow like some discussion, but I think we've had it, and so.
I've had it anyway.
I don't know if Canetta wants to speak.
Yeah, Megan.
I would urge you to not make a vote right now and to look at the numbers. It feels like, because this has been going on so long, that's been lost. I can't find it on my phone really quickly, but there is a compounding nature. In the very first proposal that came out, that it wasn't the right amount. So there is a compounding nature to the change. And I would just urge you to listen to the technical experts have weighed in. And I haven't heard a single technical expert that is really feeling like this is going to be worthless. In fact, just the opposite.
Yeah, the compounding is, I believe, 3% at every 5 years, not 15%.
Okay. Well, anecdotally, all the experts say do not sell.
Okay. Can I add anything before we take a vote?
I think I'm good.
Okay. So, I guess, can we do a roll call on this?
Sure.
All right, let's do a roll call.
So the motion is to approve the village manager to sell
Yes, that was the
the
motion.
lease, sell out the lease.
Yes.
All right. Stokes,
No.
Krieger.
No.
Sanford.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Housh.
No.
Okay,
All right.
that's done.
Okay,
We can set that to rest
good job, everyone.
until the next time they make a proposal in 3 years or whatever it is.
Well, it won't be that long.
Okay. Well, maybe it'll come back with 350, which is what I wanted. So, all right. Charter change. I realized that I printed out something and did not hand it out, but there was something in the packet. So I think we have a couple items that we're thinking about related to the charter change. And, you know, my initial thought is that we probably should move forward with putting something on the ballot in the fall. So I know one of the things was Lisa's suggestion that we make the term for the mayor 4 years. And is that still something, Lisa, that you're?
I do think so, but I do want to just clarify that the way I understood that would happen is that it would go on the ballot and then it wouldn't, that term would still be 2 years, and then it wasn't until the next term.
Right.
That it would be longer than 2 years.
Right.
I just want to make sure, that's what I thought, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
I'm
that's
not
right.
proposing that it changes at the same time as the run of a candidate.
Right.
Okay, cool.
So then, Judy, was there another item that's kind of a like housekeeping thing?
And it turns out that it's far, far simpler to make a text amendment to the planning code than it would be to make a charter change, because the charter states the vote count for BZA in a certain way. Planning code states it in a different way. It's easier to align the planning code with the charter.
Okay, so that's not
So-
one. So, are there any, before I talk about vote 16, are there any other issues that people have seen that they imagine that we put on the ballot? Because I guess, to me, if we're not going to go through a, you know, charter review, which I don't think we need to, we just want to put, you know, a couple items out there, like not, you know, have a lot of changes. So was there anything else before we talk about vote 16? Okay, so let me talk about vote 16. So I think the concept is pretty straightforward. It means that for local elections, 16-year-olds could vote. There's a lot of, I mean, you know, I've submitted some things about why this is a good idea. It encourages voting, that sort of thing. The one pager I just handed out is from the analysis of whether this could be legally done in Ohio. And since Ohio is a charter state, basically we can do it. And then if the state legally challenges us, then, then, I mean, they legally challenge us. I mean, you know, we would be the first community in Ohio to do it. So several communities in Maryland have done it. DC's talking about it right now. There are about 10 states that are talking about doing it. So, I mean, if we're legally challenged, I mean, you know, we could make a decision at that point to not fight it in court, you know, if there were legal costs. But otherwise, you know, it'd be one of those things that, you know, we would be innovative about doing it. So, but there's nothing in Ohio law that says we can't do it. And if you even look at federal law, it says you have to be at least 18 to vote. So there's nothing that says, or wait, it says, no, it says something a little bit different. I can't remember. It says, it puts 18 as a proxy, but it doesn't say that you can't be younger. So, Patty?
I just had a question about, first of all, I support this initiative. I think it's a great way for the younger folks to learn about voting and participating in government. But just for the sake of argument, let's say the state does challenge it and we do go to court and we lose. Well, what about all the elections that have occurred in the meantime that they've voted in? And how are those elections affected by the overturn of the?
Right.
I know that would be down the road, but it's something to think about.
Yeah. Well, can we ask the Attorney General, is there some?
I called them and they said, they only give advice to state electeds. So they won't tell us anything. So.
Perhaps we could have one of our state elected officials contact them.
Marty Heidi will be here on the 15th.
That's true. I mean, so obviously we have plenty of time until the November election. But I guess my initial thought is, I think it's a good idea. And other, municipalities and states that are charter states have done it. I'm not sure that if we had to pay legal fees to defend it, that I would support that. But if it wasn't challenged, then, I mean, why not? I mean, that's kind of my current thought, so. And then the other thing is, we did want Chris to weigh in on this as well. I know he was hot and heavy to look at it. I also thought it would be a great project for a law clinic, to look at, from Ohio State or something like that. I know we talked to UD, but maybe there's, some other legal clinic that would be more willing to take this on and not charge us anything to do it. So, all right, so it sounds like, so maybe it looks like there's consensus. If there's no cost, why not move forward? Mary Ann, what are you thinking?
Well, I think that what Patty raised is something to think about. Have you talked to Chris Conrad at all?
I mean, he knows that we've been talking about this, but he hasn't dug into it yet. He was waiting for us to kind of decide, is this something of interest? So.
Yeah, and again, Mary Ann, I support it. I'm just playing devil's advocate over here.
I support it as well.
I think it's a great idea to look into it and to see if there's resources that are valid and free.
Yeah.
That can help us. Because it's interesting, because we would be leading the way in the state.
Right.
But it's not a precedent nationally.
Right, yeah, I mean, there's 3 municipalities in Maryland. DC has been talking about this. The interesting thing about DC is if they pass it, their council, that means 16-year-olds could vote in federal elections, right? And then, like I said, there's at least 10 states that are looking at this pretty actively right now, so.
But I would find it very interesting if anyone decided to challenge that right of 16-year-olds to vote, then perhaps those votes are tossed out and maybe an election recount occurs. Those 16-year-olds will be legally voting in 2 years. Who really wants to jump into that quagmire? I mean, I think it's an unlikely thought unless the issue is seriously controversial, and I can't see that happening here as long as we don't try to have another dog park. So.
I was going to add that to an upcoming agenda.
All right, well, all right, then it sounds like, let's take the next step. Before we, since I don't think this will be under the retainer for Chris, let's see if we can get, like Ohio State or another law clinic to look at this for free. And then if there's going to be a cost attached, then I think we have to have another discussion.
Yeah, for some reason, their website's not.
So you want the search for a law clinic to happen before it goes to Chris for a?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I don't think that falls under the retainer, so. All right. Anything else related to charter change issues? Okay.
Good work, though, for all the digging you've been doing.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's the wave of the future, so, all right, cool. All right, village manager candidate finalists are gonna be announced right now. Mary Ann?
Yes, okay. So, on the 22nd, I guess it was, when we had an executive session with council members and some community members who've been working on the village manager search process to review the candidates. We had 9 at that point, and we talked about the 9. We had phone interviews with 9 people, with all 9 people, and then we decided on 4 of those people. So those 4 people are Ilke Doom, who is currently in Valdez, Alaska, as the city manager there. She is from, I think, the Detroit, Michigan area originally. Pete Bales, who is assistant city manager in Fairborn, close to home. Allison Murray, who is presently with the Westerville city government, having been village managers in a couple towns in northwestern Ohio. And Josue Salmeron, am I saying that? Salmeron? Who is in DC. He has extensive nonprofit advocacy and development work, as well as some work with the city government in DC. And went to Antioch College, as did his wife. So those are the 4 finalists, and the information about them will be in the Yellow Springs News this week. And so I can move on into the rest of the process.
Yeah.
So we have invited those 4 candidates to come on the 9th, 10th, and 11th of April. So they will be getting into town on Tuesday, April 9th. We have various staff people, council people, and then community people who've been helping with this process, involved in shepherding people around, et cetera. At any rate, they will be coming, and that afternoon, they will be getting tours of all of the village government facilities. And then they'll have the evening to do whatever they want to do. They'll all be staying at, I think, at the Mills Park Hotel. Then on Wednesday morning, Patty Bates will have breakfast with them at the hotel. And then in the morning, they will be being shepherded around the village building, pretty much, getting interviews with staff. And then there will be a luncheon at Antioch College with some selected people from the community to meet with the candidates. And in the afternoon, they'll visit Mills Lawn. They will get toured around and visit some businesses in town. And then that evening, we have a community forum. So the community forum will be in the gym. It will be televised. And it'll be from 6:30 to 8:30, after which there will be a meet and greet up in A and B. So we will do the process of the forum like we did 5 years ago, when Patty was selected, where each candidate will have about a half hour with citizens and runners, one of which is Judy, will be shepherding each candidate back and forth up to A and B, so that there's only one candidate in the gym at a time. They will have 3 minutes to say whatever they want to say in a prepared statement, and then there will be questions. We just decided today, when our logistics team met, that the other questions would be questions that get submitted by the audience. We are requesting people in the paper to think about questions they might ask. I mean, this is in the paper, this is being said. And then people will have a survey form and a 3x5 card when they come into the forum. They can write down their question, and then people will take the questions, and the moderators will ask those questions as time permits. And the moderators will be Maureen Lynch and Len Kramer from the Village Mediation Program.
And Jalen Rowe.
Well, did someone ask? I mean,
that was, that was my responsibility, and she confirmed. Yeah,
okay.
so-
We had some miscommunication, so I was
Okay.
not aware of that. So, okay,
Yep.
and Jalen. The last I had heard, people thought Jalen was too busy to do it, so.
She said she was available.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Great. Okay, then people will be submitting their survey forms on, at various points along the way. And then on Thursday morning, there will be a informal forum meet and greet at the Senior Center from 8 a.m. to 9:45 a.m. All the candidates will be there. After that, the candidates will one-on-one come to the Bryan Center and be interviewed by council members in executive session. And then there will be a lunch for at least, there will be a lunch in the middle of that. So 2 of the candidates will be interviewed in the morning, 2 of the candidates will be interviewed in the afternoon. And the plan is that then there will be an executive session Friday afternoon, I believe, 3 to 5. Well, council comes together on Friday after getting all of the survey forms, isn't that correct?
I thought we were gonna do that on Monday.
Monday.
Oh, okay, Monday.
Yep.
Before
I have.
council meeting.
Yep.
In executive session.
Right.
Okay, so by Monday, we will have all the survey forms tallied. People will be doing that, and council will meet at 6
Yep.
in executive session before the council meeting. And then the announcement will be at that council meeting.
Right, and we, we decided if an hour was not long enough, then.
Will it be announced at, okay, well, we need to talk about this, because
Right.
my understanding was council was going to do it on Friday. That person would be called, just to ensure that they were still on
Right,
board.
so-
So I don't,
Yeah, so I don't know that we'll be announcing anything on Monday. So we'll have a meeting.
why aren't we meeting on Friday? Why not?
We released that time on Friday. After discussion, we moved it to Monday.
We moved it because, and actually partly Megan's comment, that we wanted to give people enough time to give us feedback. So, because Thursday night is, when all the cards will come in, and feedback, that gives more time to tally those responses, as well as if anyone wants to reach out to us after the senior center, if they weren't going to be able to be there that evening. So we thought giving them the weekend and us the weekend to absorb those comments, and then we would have an executive session on Monday. So that's why.
But all the comments are due, Judy, to you by Friday at 3?
Friday afternoon, so that I can disseminate all of those to council, so that you can have time to read through them and.
Right. And then there's kind of I think there's this message to the community that if you want to send us an email or, have any other feedback, that we're going to have an executive session Monday at 6. So we need that feedback by then.
So when are the surveys going to be tallied?
On the Friday morning.
Well, we're going to start on Thursday evening.
Yeah.
So council will receive the tallies,
By Friday afternoon.
Yep.
but we're not getting each individual card, are we?
No.
You're getting a summary.
Yeah, kind of like a.
All right.
So I'll just highlight a few things. So again, for the public, Obviously, the forum on Wednesday is open to everybody, as well as the senior center breakfast is open to everybody. And I think the other thing, and I know Marianne, you've thanked Judy, and I will thank Judy again for all the great work jumping in on this. It's been amazing. So, allowing us not to pay a consultant $10,000. So thank you for all that you've done.
Well, and I'd like to then jump on that and just really help, thank the Citizen Advisory Committee, because they have really made it possible for sort of us to say, we need these things done, and then have people go and do them, which is pretty awesome.
And I think that's everything. Yeah. So, so we're excited. I mean, these are 4 amazing, distinct candidates that we're really excited for the community to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Any questions about that before we move into the revolving loan fund? All right, Lisa.
Okay, so the Village of Yellow Springs has previously had a revolving loan fund that made small loans to businesses, but it's been dormant for some time. And in my limited tenure on council, we've been discussing, so almost for 2 years now, reinvigorating it. And I understand that in the Economic Development Fund, we've known that $35,000 was set aside for that. So it had been my understanding that the revolving loan fund would sit perfectly in the designated community improvement corporation, partly because of some of the confidentiality issues of people's personal financial information and credit information, things that, you know, if it's coming council, it's all very open, and even though we want everything to be open, there's some things that, you know, should still remain private. But we've now come to understand, unearthing a memo, solicitor report back from March 5th, 2018, that under the terms of a DCIC, although in many, many ways they're very flexible, it specifically states that a DCIC may not approve any application for a loan unless the applicant shows that the person has been denied for the loan through ordinary banking or commercial channels. And so it comes, 2 things come to mind.
Can I just insert right there?
Sure.
That, I mean, for the record, the reason why we started discussing the designated CIC was because of the revolving loan fund, because this is going to be relevant to a future discussion. So I just want that to be noted, that we were advised that this was the way to do it, and then we happened to read the memo that we got that said we can't do it. So anyway.
So we're on a bit of a salvage, okay? Solicitor salvage. So it comes to mind, though, that the 2 things. Well, the DCIC, we'll talk about that later, is coming along nicely, but it doesn't exist yet. So we're just still not getting the revolving loan fund going. And then the other thing is that the DCIC, or in fact the village with its revolving loan fund, may not want to be restricted to only giving loans to individuals who have been denied for a loan through conventional lending, because it seems to me to be kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do. So, you know, sort of the overarching recommendation that I'm saying is like, why wait? Let's just get the revolving loan fund going again under a process that already is quite well templated, that engages the Economic Sustainability Commission, council review. The Yellow Springs Credit Union is behaving in a very collaborative way. Patty is helping to figure out if the what, you may have an update on this, but what I understand is that the auditor may not prefer that we do work with the credit union, but, you know, I will also down the road have an argument about that too, because it's not that much money, and prefer is different than you can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're starting by asking nicely.
Right.
And saying, we understand that you prefer,
You prefer.
but
Right.
we'll get to the,
Right,
we'll get
and
to
our,
the other
you know, our
argument.
credit union I apologize that I don't know the exact language of the level of a credit union that it is in terms of being an equivalent to FDIC. You know,
It is.
It's fully insured.
it has another name though.
Yeah,
Credit unions have different
yeah,
terminology,
yeah.
but it's like that, so, sorry, my language is
Yeah, I'm
sloppy
trying to remember
there.
what it.
Yeah, I can't remember, but anyway, what I propose doing is to continue, working with staff. This is down at the bottom. Patty, and Colleen are working on auditor perspectives. I think that we are very close to being able to pull together, a loan administration overview with a credit union. I've learned a lot about how interest works. We need to update the application forms, criteria, and review the process. And then there's a list of questions that I'd like to pull together to bring to council to consider. So here's an example. The credit union is not making any profit on this relationship. They are basically doing this at cost, and that cost has some marginal variability. But like right now, it's at 3.5%. So we can decide how much interest we would want to put on our revolving loan funds by understanding how much interest we want to make on top of what the credit union has to charge just to keep the lights on. So we could choose a flat rate interest loan, or we also could look at, just as banks and credit unions do, look at some tiered interest rates as well, based on loan risk considerations. So, like I said, I'm learning a lot about this. I would like to put together a list of questions and bring them to council, and I just have this on an agenda. But I just wanted to see if everyone would agree that at this point, knowing what we know about the restrictions of a DCIC, that you would agree that we should get this program reignited to support economic development in Yellow Springs. And I'm glad to take the lead.
And the 3.5%, so that's coming from the credit union?
Right, and
Okay.
that's a variable number. Actually,
Right.
it's come down since the last time we looked at it.
Mhm.
But that's pretty much somewhere in the threes. Sandy had said she's never seen it outside of 3.
Okay.
So then she has, I mean, I don't want to get too far into it tonight because I
Yeah.
know we don't have a lot of time. But basically, here's something else I thought that was really, really interesting. So let's say we have $35,000 on deposit. That's like in a certificate of deposit. So when we loan someone, say, $10,000, our balance doesn't go down to $25,000. Our balance is still $35,000. That $35,000 stays there unless we have a default.
Right.
So it's not like we are spending down exactly. So that was a new piece of information to me, and I think to Patty when we were talking about it. So, and then the other thing is, over a period of time, should our loan decisions show that they have a good return on investment, the credit union would even consider helping us leverage so that we would even loan over our amount on deposit. Of course, we would want to increase our amount on deposit. So anyway, it's a lot of little details, but that are important, that are just business decisions that we would want to make in order to balance out our goal to pursue a strong economy and, you know, build economic development and give loans to people who need them that can help support economic development in the village of Yellow Springs, versus having a little bit of an interest rate earning to hedge our risks. That's just going to be a decision we'll have to make. I personally am leaning towards the idea of a tiered system. The other thing that I think is going to be really important to stress as we continue with this is that, you know, having this program live for our community, we really need to talk about this a lot and let people know that without programs like this, maybe community members really wouldn't qualify. These are opportunities that without the revolving loan program, you know, people wouldn't have the opportunity to get this money. They'd pay way more through any other source of funding. And so it would really be a great asset that our community's doing it. So that's why I say, why wait? Let's get it going.
Sounds good.
Anybody have any concerns with the next steps as proposed?
So the amount of total interest that would be charged would be less than what would be paid if they took out a loan from a bank.
Unless they have gorgeous credit. I mean, you know, there are, I mean, people who have a ton of money.
Well,
you know.
but these aren't ton of money loans.
Right, yes,
These are small loans.
exactly.
Well, I guess the only other thing is, you know, there are people who have some money in the community that maybe if they want to encourage entrepreneurship, this could be an opportunity, a donation to that fund, the loan fund.
That's an interesting idea.
Right. Well, and ultimately, we do want to apply for USDA funds. So once we get this going, we can, and Emily Seibel and Susan Jennings researched this. I mean, we could apply for up to $250,000 to, you know, really like put in some money if we get it started. You know, we've been waiting on that because without a program, like, it doesn't make sense to apply, I don't think, so.
And I do think we would have to have legal counsel about the donation idea. I mean, maybe there could be a separate fund, but the money that's on deposit is the village money. So I think we'd have to talk through if someone's donating money, how that would be handled.
But that being said,
I'm not saying it can't
I mean,
happen,
that,
but.
I mean, but that 35,000, you know, came about because that's what was left in the revolving loan fund when it went on hiatus. So it's not coming from tax dollars.
No, but it's not donations either.
Right, right. But we have.
Right, it's not tax dollars, but it's not donations.
Right.
It's still the village's money.
Sure.
Right, so I
Yeah.
just don't know. Great idea,
Yeah.
love it, but, you know, it sounds to me more like the way we had to do the utility roundup, where we had to create a fund to catch donations that, I don't know. We'd have to look into it.
Or maybe they donate it to the credit union, but yeah.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we could, yeah, but we
Yeah.
could check.
So basically, though, our $35,000 goes into a certificate of deposit.
Right.
That we would decide what the terms are, and the credit union will create the terms we want, and that's how that money's held,
Yep.
So it's held in a certificate.
as a certificate, that amount,
Right. That's the guarantee.
yeah.
But yeah, you know, I think it's important to, you know, recognize that we're not pulling this money out of our general fund. We had this money left over from the revolving loan fund that went on hiatus about 10 years ago. Sounds awesome.
Okay, I will press on.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, Housing Advisory Board, Mary Ann?
Yeah, the Housing Advisory Board has decided to start meeting once a month, and our next meeting won't be until the 31st. But in the meantime, various of us on the board have had conversations with people in Yellow Springs and outside of Yellow Springs, looking at, well, I listed the 4 bullet points, thinking about how to have a collaborative relationship between the village and Yellow Springs Home, Inc. Starting to think about how do we start approaching housing development on the glass farm. And then the 3rd bullet point, what I've termed voluntary inclusionary zoning, that is land privately held land in the village where we would work with the developer to offer incentives so that there would be affordable housing on those, mixed in with market rate housing. And then the last thing, looking at the pros and cons of the village manager's housing advisory board becoming a commission. So at our next council meeting, I'd like to elaborate on the kind of things that we've been looking at of these 4 things primarily. And while we didn't decide as a housing board on whether we should become a commission or not, it was suggested that we complete certain tasks before that would happen. And my sense at this point is that it would make sense to wait until after we have a new village manager to make that decision. So that's all that I wanted to say at this point.
Cool. I do want to make sure it's on our radar, because the school board in a board meeting has talked about, their interest in, some of their property being residential. So I just want to make sure that that's.
My sense is that what we will, or an option anyway, I should say, is that we, the Housing Advisory Board, would host a meeting for people who own property where there might be housing development, developers themselves, realtors, probably those were the 3. So, and the schools, Antioch College, the Kinney property, some other places, and realtors, and have a meeting with them to talk about the kind of things that they say, if the village could do this or this, and sort of have give and take on information regarding what the village would like to see in terms of housing, and find out the kind of incentives that might be helpful.
And then will that also inform what we do with the glass farm? I mean, are you thinking that?
I see the glass farm as a separate issue, because the glass farm, we have begun a conversation with a nonprofit developer and a for-profit developer regarding the glass farm. But I see that as a separate issue, because the glass farm presumably will have much more, very much higher percentage of affordable housing than any of these other properties. And we, council, gets to determine what we want to have on the glass farm in collaboration with what can be there and the housing needs assessment and goals and things like that. That's a different thing, though.
So the reason why I think they're linked is because the amount of residential development that might happen in some of these other areas would affect, in my mind, the speed at which we develop glass farm in particular. So I just want to think about, I mean, at some point there's a limit to how much housing.
Yes, there is that relationship. I mean, if we know that X is going to be planning on developing 100 units, and they're going to be cottages and whatever, and Y is going to be developed. Yeah,
so that's the main.
That's part of the sort of looking collaboratively at who's doing what, so we know what's going on.
Good.
That, in that respect, yeah.
Yep. Cool. That's what I'm thinking. Yep. All right.
Yep.
Okay. And so moving forward.
Moving right along.
This is from now on, it is the DCDC, Designated Community Development Corporation. All right?
YSDCDC?
Yes,
Yellow
YS.
Springs Community Development Corporation.
Yeah, we took
Did
the
you get this?
designated off.
Well, we can't do that. I mean, it's still designated in
It's still a
parenthetical.
it's still a DCIC,
But from now on, there will not be an I. It will always be a Community Development Corporation. Yes. Okay. Lisa.
Yeah, that was a great segue, actually, into it, because this point about coordination,
Yes.
is becoming extremely clear.
Mhm.
And how important it is that we get our DCIC, that is called the Yellow Springs Community Development Corporation, up and running. So just to make it clear, it's a little confusing. The DCIC language, that's the regulatory language, is under that umbrella. But we're calling it the Yellow Springs Community Development Corporation. So we need to get it up and running quickly because we have some opportunities. So this evening, I'd like to request an approval of an allocation of $10,000 from the existing economic development capital budget that currently has around $143,000+ in it. So the money is there earmarked for economic development. So why are we asking for that allocation right now from the village that is one stakeholder in the YSCDC? So, you know, over the last year or so, this council's been receiving a series of briefings about the progress to form the YSCDC. And it seems to have been, you know, positive reactions all along the way. On the back of this, well, it depends on how you have it printed, but I provided some of that additional background just to remind you of what the membership was and the commitment to transparency that we know is really important. And you may recall that back in December, the Community Foundation agreed to act as the convener for planning because it's very important that the YSCDC is a true collaborative. So the village is a very active participant, but we're not driving. It's a board of its own. It's a 501c3. And so since that December agreement of the Community Foundation, there have been 3 meetings. There was one in January, one in March, and one today. And you'll see on that document who all has been involved. We've had strong participation by the Community Foundation, the schools, Patty's been there, Brian and I attend, Tom Manley, Chris Mucher, and Karen representing the chamber. So the 501c3 startup has begun in earnest. The Code of Regulations for that 501c3 is under review, and the process to apply for the 501c3 has been clarified. There is some potential opportunities that are under discussion that we see as time sensitive, so we really don't want to keep putting this off. One is Antioch Hall. There's already been a significant investment in that through the Community Foundation that you may be aware of. We've started looking at the formation of an energy SID. Remember at our last council meeting? That seems to be well in the low-hanging fruit category. The schools have brought up that the field properties are definitely of interest for residential development, and they've put that out already for us to discuss at the YSCDC. The old firehouse, and once there's a new firehouse, then there'll be an old firehouse, and the Dayton Railroad Street property. So today at the meeting, we talked about initial startup funding, and the other stakeholders have agreed each to put up $500, which is not a lot of money, we know, but when the Community Foundation first convened, we agreed that it was important that every stakeholder put something on the table for their membership. But we do know that in order to get the 501c3 filed, we're going to have some legal services and some filing fees. And so the reason that I'm asking tonight for the council to agree to an allocation of $10,000 from the Economic Development Fund is that at least initially, the village, among the other stakeholders, has the greatest opportunity to have an initial gain once the YSCDC is formed. Now, I think over time, as you look at these opportunities, you see there's assets from all the stakeholders are already on the list. But we have to get this up and launched. We have to get the 501c3 formed, or we're not going to be able to leverage any of these opportunities. So
And
that's
as
what
a-
I'm asking for.
And as a side note, other stakeholders have already mentioned, that they plan to
Yes.
invest more.
In fact, another stakeholder said, this needs to be fair. Money is power, is power. The village is not driving this, so we understand that we also have to bring assets. So, but we right now need to get going on this 501c3. So that's why I don't think this is a surprise maybe to anybody, since we've been talking about this all along and have talked about this economic development fund being a potential for some seed money, but we need to allocate the money right away so we can keep moving.
To make the 501c3 happen.
Yep.
So, questions or comments? Mary Ann? Okay, then I'll make a motion that we allocate $10,000 from the Economic Development Fund to get the 501c3 going.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Excellent, thank you,
Thank you
Lisa.
very much.
Okay, so, we have no new business. Patty, anything you want to highlight in your manager's report?
Just a couple of things. So right now we have 199 people signed up for the utility roundup. We
Wow.
need more. That's a lot, but we need more to keep this going. In the month of March, we had 5 applications. 2 of those were approved for the maximum of $200. 2 were, others were approved, or the 3 others were approved for a lesser amount. So if you need to apply for help from the utility roundup, please make sure that you speak to the ladies in the utility office no later than the 20th of the month. They are due on the 20th of the month. And if you have not yet signed up for the utility roundup and want to add those last few pennies onto your bill to help someone else, please call 767-7202 extension 2. And Nathan Lee or Casey or Connor will be happy to help you sign up to join that program.
I think you can also make one-time donations.
You can make one-time donations by adding it onto your bill or by delivering a payment in person to the utility office, if you want to do that.
And you can make one-time donations multiple times.
Right.
See?
Again, Spring Cleanup Week is the week of May 6th to the 10th. If you have large items that you need Rumpke to pick up, please put them out on your regular trash pickup day. So if they come and pick up your trash on Monday, it goes out on Monday. Don't put it out on Tuesday, they won't come back and get it. So please make sure you get it out on this, with the day that your trash is normally picked up. And I just want to give everybody a heads up. We were notified by Vectron Energy that they are going to be working on 4 major projects in the village this summer, and Johnny Burns will be bringing a full report on that to the April 15th meeting to brief all of you. And last but not least, I will not be at the next meeting. I am taking a little vacation. Don't look surprised, you approved it. I have it in an email. So Mike and I are going to take some time and celebrate our 33rd wedding anniversary.
Wow.
Wow,
Congratulations.
nice.
Happy anniversary. Wow.
Have fun.
Thanks.
Judy?
Nope, nothing.
Yeah, again, thanks for submitting that document about
Yes.
discourse. It's very, very, very helpful. And I think also very instructive for us in terms of how we respond to citizen feedback.
I really liked Sam Eckenrode's idea, and it seems like that document could really be the basis of that.
Yep,
Or, I just,
I agree.
really good.
Yeah, maybe you or Eleanor could like play around with that a little bit, or?
Eleanor is
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. Well.
Oh,
Yeah.
bummer.
Well, we've got it for one more week, but
All right.
yeah.
But yeah, let's
be a new Eleanor.
let's try to
Yes.
make that, let's try to make that happen. I think that would be cool, and we could also put that up on the website, and so. Okay, future agenda items. Anything we want to talk about there?
So I'd like to have time for a housing update, and decorum proposal.
I need to add a paving resolution to get on the county paving program.
Okay.
We might have something about the police assessment,
Yeah,
some update anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be signing the contract tomorrow, so.
yeah, I would imagine.
So village manager's report for that, or you need a special?
I don't know.
Or we may know when they're coming or to start, but.
Well, we'll definitely want to talk about what we're doing.
And the DCIC update can come off April 15th now, since we,
Yeah.
What I was
Squeezed it
gonna
in
ask,
today.
if you wanted to bring your EDRLF list of questions for follow-up for the 15th.
oh, that's really tight.
Oh, I just made a note.
Well,
Just say no.
I mean,
Well, it depends on, I want to talk to the Economic Sustainability Commission about this too, but I don't want to put it off, maybe. I'd rather have some time and then I'll release it. If I,
Okay.
so let's put it on
Let's put it on.
May 6th and then see what happens, right?
yeah, yeah.
6, okay. And then Vector and Energy updates from Johnny,
Yeah,
goes
his-
on the 15th.
Mhm.
And then you have a whole load of legislation coming onto your regular agenda, because you got those second readings.
Right. Okay, anything else? All right, excellent meeting, everybody. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, thanks.
Wow, it's only 9:15.
Wow.
How did it happen?
April Fools, we're still here for another 2 hours.